I have the great honor of being with Leonard Landau at the Friars Club. And I met him several months ago, and he was talking about being a Broadway producer, and he says, but you know what I'm most proud of? And I said, what's that? He says, I was just given the medal.
Chevalier Medal of Honor.
Chevalier Medal of Honor.
From the French president.
And he says, that is my greatest honor in life. Is that, would
Yes,
you say that?
Absolutely.
So just tell us about the medal, and then we'll go through some of your past history.
I got a letter from the president, Emmanuel Macron, saying that he's sending over his chief of staff to pin a medal on me. July 4th in Central Park.
July 4th, this was
Is last year,
last year, so 1 year.
2017.
Yeah, about 1 year ago.
Yeah, and I was very honored. And he sends over his chief of staff. On July 4th, the Queen Mary arrives in port, and at least 100 Frenchmen
Really?
got off the ship.
So this is a big event.
It was a big event. There must have been 150, 200 people there honoring me and 10 other GIs. If they gave us medals after the war, there'd probably be 100,000 men they'd have to give medals to. But how many 90-year-old men are left?
Yes.
So there were only 10 of us, 11 of us. And I got the
So
Chevalier.
you are a survivor, and
Yeah, I guess so.
You really are a survivor. You graduated college.
I graduated from college, and I was then drafted and went to Camp Lee, Virginia, Quartermaster Corps.
Tell us what the quartermaster tour.
Quartermaster
Corps
Corps handles
is.
all kinds of clothing.
Okay. So not very romantic in a way.
Romantic? No, but that's a division.
Necessary.
That's a
but
necessary
not very,
division.
Romantic.
And that's where I had my basic training.
Okay.
I then went into the Air Corps,
And that was they just put you there.
basic training.
Okay.
They put you there.
Okay.
And then I went into the Air Corps. I wanted to become either a bombardier or a navigator. They sent me down
So that was your choice to go. That's what you wanted to do.
yes, I asked to go into the Air Corps.
Why?
I figured it was more romantic and more fun flying than walking in the mud. And I didn't want to be in the infantry. That's the one place I didn't want to be.
And the one place you ended up.
And in one place I ended up. So when we were in the Air Corps, I was down in Florida teaching the pilots how to survive in the ocean if they were shot down. So that was my job. I was a lifeguard instructor, and I taught the Air Corps, if they're shot down, how to save their lives, how to exist in the ocean. So the war was ready to start. So they washed everybody out of the Air Corps. D-Day was coming.
Oh, they needed infantry.
And they put our whole outfit into the infantry.
I see.
And this colonel came down and handpicked 20 men who were all New York accountants and lawyers, college grads,
Right.
to start a new organization called Chief of Transportation.
I see.
We flew over to London. We were in London during the Blitz with the V1s and V2s
Really?
flying overhead. I
Wow.
have quite a few experiences
Well,
with
tell us about one experience. That
one
you
experience
remember.
with a V1. Okay.
The V1 being explain the V1, V2.
Okay, the V1 was a airplane loaded with dynamite. Unmanned.
Unmanned.
They would send the airplane over London and Liège, and when they ran out of fuel, it would come down
Really?
and bomb wherever it hit.
How did they get it started? Someone must have.
It's an airplane. It's an airplane with a propeller.
So they just put it on go
They
and
put it on go and it went.
it went.
And it went. And it flew over London. And when it ran out of fuel, it landed and dropped its bomb. That was what was called the Blitz. The V2 was a projectile. Was an actual rocket.
Rocket.
At any rate, an experience you want to know? I was coming home late at night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and someone loaned me a bicycle. So I'm coming back to my barracks, and it's a white line down the middle of the street. There are no lights any place. It's complete blackout in London.
Because of the Blitz.
Because of the Blitz, because of the bombings, because they would send airplanes over and bomb the heck out of London, Liège. And as I'm pedaling back to my barracks, a V-1 comes overhead.
This is an airplane.
It's an airplane loaded with dynamite. You can watch it. It's fire. It's an airplane full of fire, bright light. You can watch it coming.
Okay. It looked like fire.
It looked like an airplane on fire.
Because?
Because as the motor was discharging, it would let off a bright light.
I see.
And it would look like it was on fire.
I see.
It was a bright light.
Okay.
You watch the airplane coming overhead in the
And
middle of the darkness.
So you're on your bicycle, riding
I'm on
down
my
this
bicycle,
line.
so I stop and I'm watching it. And as I watch it, the motor stops. It started to come down, and as it started to come down, it was a little bit to my left. So I immediately scooted off to the right. I put about 4 streets between me and it by the time it landed and exploded.
Right.
The street that I was on, all the buildings, the glass were blown out.
Right.
It imploded rather than exploded.
Right.
So here I am lying down on the ground, my knees bleeding.
Because you fell? Because from the
I was
impact?
blown 20 feet from my bicycle. The impact 4 blocks away blew me off my bicycle.
Wow.
And as I'm lying in the middle of the gutter with a bloody knee, a little old gray-haired lady walked out of one of the buildings and as nonchalantly as could be said, "Would you like a cup of tea, Yank?" I said, "Yes, I would." And sure enough, she came out and brought me a cup of tea.
That's wonderful. What spirit.
Great story.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you, what was the mood during the Blitzkrieg? With the
What was the
people?
mood?
Yeah, with the people. You know, with the people, with the.
You cannot believe how relaxed they were in the
Really?
middle of being bombed. The English people were very stoic about the whole thing.
Really.
Yeah, they were very nice.
Really.
They accepted it.
They just
This is
accepted it.
war. This is war. This is their role. And if they're being bombed, they go into their shelters, and they try to stay away from the bombs,
Wow.
and they try to exist. They use the subways, the underground. It was very far underground, so they used
so
that
they
as
hid under
shelters.
that. Yeah.
That was the shelter.
And this is the fascinating part of this, is again the psychology of the whole thing. How do you cope with this overwhelming situation?
It's not, you accept it.
You just accept it.
You accept it. You accept it, and you try to get out of it. You try to get away from it. You accept the fact that the bomb's coming.
Okay, so you
try to avoid it.
So from and how were you after you were blown away 20 feet? What was you? I mean, I know she was calm. What were you like?
I was shaking.
Shaking.
My knees were bleeding, and I was shaking.
Do
And
you
yet-
remember? Let me just, if you can go back, and you saw it coming down, and you're pedaling away.
I was scared.
You were scared. Didn't
I was scared, and I wanted to get as far away from it as I could. Yeah, I was
So
scared.
what thoughts, if you remember, was it just fear? I got to pedal.
No, it was.
What was it?
I was scared, but I knew I had to act.
So you just had to act.
I just had to act, and I act.
Action take over.
Yeah.
So were you thinking about anything? What's going to happen? Or was it just,
All I was thinking about, I got to get away from this as
gotta
fast
get
as
away?
possible.
So you were thinking on just
And I didn't expect to have any trouble.
okay. Oh, you didn't. You
I didn't
expected
expect
to
it.
live. Okay.
No, I was very stoic about my well-being.
Through the war,
through the war. I didn't expect any problems.
you didn't expect any problems.
No, no. I suspected all along that I was going to survive the war.
How did you know? Well, how did you go with that?
I'm a good athlete.
Do you think
I'm in control. I'm in control of myself.
Do you think most men, and I know it varies a great deal, but if you can just, do most men in the midst of war, do they genuinely feel that they're going to survive?
I would almost imagine so.
You think so?
Yeah. How could you not? How could you be frightened of what's going to happen? You can't. You got to feel like you're going to survive this
Okay, so now let's go.
and win the war. There was no question that we were going to win the war.
There's no question.
No question.
Okay.
We are the most superior warriors in the world.
Yeah.
We had the best equipped army. How could you not expect to survive it and destroy the enemy?
After London, what happened?
After London, that's when the D-Day came about, and we decided to invade France. And the Germans didn't know whether we were coming in at Normandy Beach or at Calais,
Yes, which was the big.
which was a big thing, trying to keeping it from them.
Yes.
And Eisenhower picked the right day because of the weather and because of everything else.
Right.
And there's a whole history about why it was June 6th.
Yeah.
And the first onslaught, day 1, day 2, that was disaster. Tens of thousands of men were killed.
Died.
Yeah.
And
Before they even reached the beach.
And you came in
D+7.
D+7.
By D+3, already the Germans were starting to run.
I see.
So D+7, we just started to chase the Germans.
I see. But did you land with a landing craft?
Landed with a landing craft, you got out of the water, you walked halfway, you walked in the water for a couple of 100 yards and got up on the beach.
And then, tell us about your
Then you
experience.
organized, then your troops were organized, and that's when we started following the Germans.
And so
and
really
we-
tell us about your particular experience. Where did you?
Well, we marched for 200 miles that was from June 6th to August 25th. June, July, August. It's only 2 months. We walked 200 miles.
You walked 200 miles,
Yeah, marched, walked.
but you really weren't engaged in combat yourself.
We were not engaged in combat. We were following the Germans, and we never met any Germans. We just followed them.
Did you continue with this troop that you had?
Yes,
that you had
yes.
to
It was a
put together?
transportation corps, and we were part of an army. When we got to Paris, we marched right through the Arc de Triomphe, right behind Charles de Gaulle.
Ah,
Day 1.
So you were there day 1.
Day 1.
So now tell us about this. Again, opportunity strikes for Leonard Landau.
Okay, we arrived at the Avenue des Grands Armies, and Charles de Gaulle hadn't arrived yet.
Ah,
So we had to wait 2 hours for Charles de Gaulle to arrive, and then when he marched through the Arc de Triomphe, we followed right behind him. I was kissed more that day than my whole life put
Really?
together.
What a
Every girl in Paris
What a
kissed
day.
all the GIs.
Really?
It was very exciting.
Right.
Accordions were playing on the street, they were dancing.
Wow.
It was a very exciting day.
Yeah, exhilarating. Must have been exhilarating. Yes.
August 20, it was exciting.
Yeah,
1944.
yeah.
And we stayed in Paris until the week before the Battle of the Bulge, where they took the rear echelon troops to go fight against the 11 German armies
Yeah.
who were surrounding 4 American armies. And the German general wanted the Americans to surrender.
Right.
And General McAuliffe at that time sent back a message, nuts,
Yeah.
which the Germans had no idea what he meant. or
It's
what-
code, right?
Yeah. At any rate, on Christmas Day, 1944, the weather got nice for the first time in 2 weeks.
Right.
And we were able to drop ammunition and food to the 4 armies that were surrounded.
Yes.
Patton's armor came up from the south, and that line of tanks and trucks and soldiers lasted about 8 hours. They kept coming, and they went right by us.
Wow.
We were 10 miles short of the German army,
Right.
and as they marched past us, 8 hours of soldiers.
8 hours.
8 hours of soldiers going right by us.
Soldiers and tanks.
Soldiers and tanks and trucks.
And the mood must have
And
been.
we cheered for 8 hours.
The mood must have been exuberant.
Yeah. And that was Christmas Day, 1944.
Wow.
And even though the war lasted 6 more months, we turned around, went back to Paris.
Right.
And that was the end of the war for us.
For you.
Yeah. We
Now-
finished off the war in Paris.
Tell us about the Battle of the Bulge, because even though you weren't in
The actual
in
fighting.
the actual fighting, it was still an enormous ordeal.
Well, the Germans decided that they were going to make a final push. There were 4 American armies at the top of the Battle of the Bulge, which is, I think they call it Bruges or Brussels. And the 11 armies surrounded them, but the weather was so bad that they couldn't break through. And that lasted from, I think, December 16th until Christmas Day.
And you were there during that period.
No, I only came up the week before.
Or the week.
I only came up on the around the 20th, around 19th or 20th.
And the weather was brutal.
Weather was below zero, snow in the foxholes. We only had two pairs of socks, and one pair that you're wearing was always soaking wet.
Always.
The other pair of socks you put on your chest to the heat
warm
from
it
your
up.
chest to warm up the socks to keep them dry. And when nighttime came, you hugged your buddy,
Really.
and you
Literally.
couldn't go to sleep, because if you fell asleep, you would be
Yeah. So you took
you would-
shifts.
you took shifts. If you fell asleep, you would die of frostbite. You'd die of the frost. It was below zero. And for a week,
So there was just 2 in a foxhole.
well, in my foxhole there were 2, but some of the foxholes had more than 2. But actually, we hugged our buddy to keep warm.
And you were dependent on this fellow for your life.
He's got your back, and you got his back.
Wow.
Everybody's got your back.
Do you remember the name of the fellow you were with?
Eddie Alaco was a corporal. I was a sergeant.
Right.
I'll never forget him. And yeah, I don't know where he is
You
or
don't
whatever.
know where he is.
I know he is where he is.
Wow.
I remember the name.
And while you were in the foxhole, in the miserable conditions, again, what were
You're
you
shivering.
doing? You're just
You're
shivering.
cold. You're cold.
You're just thinking about surviving. Then.
You see, that's all you can think about is surviving. Now you're scared because you can't break through the German army. There are 11 armies there. You can't. We only had 4,000 men.
And your food?
We had food. We brought food with us.
You had food?
Dried food. Yeah, we brought that with us.
So it wasn't hunger.
No, we no hunger. Just cold.
Just cold.
And for a week we were cold.
And you couldn't set fires because then they would.
No, I don't think you set fires. You didn't want anybody to know you were there.
Didn't know you were there.
Yeah. And we
Did you think when you were in this foxhole that you were going to survive?
yeah. I knew I was going to survive,
You're amazing.
but I was scared.
You were scared.
I was scared, and I didn't know how it was going to end. But on that Christmas Day, when Patton's armor broke through, that was absolutely great.
That was it, huh?
Yeah. And for us, it was the end of the war.
So you went back to Paris?
Went back to Paris, and I closed out the Paris office.
I see. And then back.
Then I came home, yes. Then I came home.
So why don't we just go back, if we can now switch a little bit, because I want to go back to that. And just tell us about life after the war, really.
Life after the
because
war.
You're very accomplished in your own right.
Okay, start after the war. I started a business after the war, Ace Box Landau Co. Inc., manufacturing corrugated boxes, paper and twine.
How did you get into that? Just curious.
When I got out of the war, I took a job as an accountant because I graduated from college before I went into the Army as an accountant. So I had a job for about a year, and I didn't like the idea of private accounting. So I went to work for a shopping bag manufacturer, and after 1 year I decided I knew enough about the business and I was going to start my own business. So we started manufacturing shopping bags, paper bags, corrugated boxes. And I've done that now for 68 years, and because I've been successful for
You still do that?
I still go to work every day of my life.
Manufacturing corrugated
Corrugated cartons, right.
So that's your
That's what keeps me going.
that's your income. That has been
That's
your
my
income
income.
source.
So because I have income from Ace Box Company, I was able to produce Broadway shows. I was able to produce.
Wow.
I was able to teach art at the New School. I was able to become a sculptor. I was able to produce Broadway shows.
Wow.
In fact, in 1957, I had 2 shows on Broadway, and I was invited to the Friars Club here by Milton Berle.
Really?
And I had lunch here with Milton Berle, Joey Adams, Henny Youngman, and Red Buttons.
Unbelievable.
And I was blown away. And that was in 1957, and from that point on, I've loved the Friars Club. And I'm a member of more than 45 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's a great club.
How did you get to know Milton Berle?
Well, he knew of my shows, and there was a fellow producer by the name of Joe Kipnis who had a restaurant, as a matter of fact, called Pier 7 or something like that, and he invited both of us to come for lunch. So we came for lunch. I brought the lead of my show, who was Maureen O'Hara. They were very enamored with her. So they didn't sit at my table just to see me. They came to see her.
See her.
She was John Wayne's sidekick
Really?
in a lot of movies.
Wow.
And what most people don't know is that she has a gorgeous voice.
Oh.
And that was the first time she sang in a show.
Could you tell me about that side of your life? Because I could already see a split of something very kind of mundane of corrugated boxes, but you have like a artistic side to you, a very artistic side, because I didn't know about the sculpture, and also the producer. Could you tell us how that evolved?
When I went to college,
Where did you go to school, man?
CCNY,
And your
College of the City of New York.
And your degree was?
My degree was Bachelor of Business Administration. I got a degree in 1941. And I had already had the degree before I went into the Army. Went into the Army at 22. And I love Broadway. I love shows. I love show business. But I was very poor. And I couldn't afford to buy a ticket.
Wow.
So I went down to Broadway. In fact, it's very funny. I would even have a date. I would get on a double-decker bus
Right.
for 5 cents.
Right.
Go down to
Those
the
are
end
days.
of New York,
Right.
and for 5 cents take an ocean voyage over to Staten Island.
Right.
And if you didn't get off the ship, you can come back for the same nickel.
Wow.
And then we would go to Broadway with a bus, and we would sneak into every second and third act on Broadway.
Really?
So I saw everything on Broadway and off Broadway, second and third
Second
act.
and third act. 'cause
Second and
nobody
third
was-
act. Never saw the
That was
first.
very clever.
Never saw the first act.
That was very clever.
And I really enjoyed the theater.
Wow.
And when I had the opportunity, the first show I produced was the one with Maureen O'Hara.
I see. What show
And
was that?
that was called Christine.
Uh-huh.
Great show. And I also, the same year, I did the Folies Bergère. We brought the Lido show over from Paris.
Now, did you have your own monetary support at that point, or you just?
Ace Box Company.
So that was providing.
Ace Box
that was
provided
providing money.
and gave me the time to be able to devote to theater.
I see. And can I ask, what was it like producing the? Just tell us about the.
What's
of a producer,
producing like?
yes.
You select the show, you select the material, you get somebody to write the story, get somebody to write the music, get somebody to write the lyrics.
So you took it from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So you really took it.
That's what a producer does.
Okay, so you took it from the beginning, from before
And,
inception, really.
puts the show puts the show together.
Wow,
And
so
puts-
that really is a major role.
Yeah, it's
It's
amazing.
not just
No, a producer's not just producing money.
yes, which many people think of it as.
Yeah,
It's-
but you do have to raise the money
right,
to get the show onto Broadway or off Broadway.
right. So what are some of? Tell us some about some of the
shows.
producers, yes.
I've done Lullaby on Broadway, Jacques Brel's Alive and Well Living in Paris, Red Roses, Folies Bergère.
And you
Christine.
and you love doing.
In fact, the latest one I just did was last year we did the Cagney,
Oh,
story of James Cagney,
wow.
who wanted to be a song and dance man, and they made him into a gangster.
Oh,
So he winds up on film as a gangster,
Yes.
and all he wanted to do was dance. And Bob Hope gave him the opportunity in one show where he and Bob Hope did a dance routine together.
is that true?
That's a true story.
Wow.
And when at the Friars Club, as a matter of fact, he and Bob Hope do a dance routine
No kidding.
50 years ago.
So this was your latest production.
That was the latest production, Cagney.
Can you just walk us through? Did you come up with that idea?
No, somebody else came up with the idea
Okay.
and asked me if I wanted to get involved with it.
Okay.
And she showed me the script, and I went down to see one of the productions, and I said, okay, I'll help you raise some money.
And what made that so in this show, in this particular show, you were
I was not one of the producers that selected the cast, that selected the
Can you
people.
tell us about one show in particular that you really took from inception to a successful?
All of them, starting with
Just tell us the story of one, if you could. You could put some color to it, if you will.
put some color to a story.
Well, just to to give us an idea of how it really evolved in your mind and why how it went. Does that make? Does anything come to
the
mind?
show that was the most fun for me
Yeah, there we go. I like that one.
was a show called. As a matter of fact,
Yeah, let's do this.
we did it at Caesar's Palace, and we changed the name of the show from Lullaby on Broadway. We changed it to Pizzazz.
Ah,
So we worked in Caesar's Palace. This is the show Lullaby on Broadway.
okay, we'll show that.
And while we were doing that, we invited 2 busloads of friars to Atlantic City, and we put on a show in Atlantic City called Pizzazz. That's Jacques Brel's Alive and Well Living in Paris. Did that several times. In fact, Jacques Brel's done with 4 people. I once did it with 24 people on stage, which is very rare and unusual.
Wow.
We've done Lullaby on Broadway many times. And then here's the Pizzazz, where the Friars Club went down and had dinner, saw the show, gambled, and came back to the Friars Club.
Nice.
That's-
okay. So now you were telling us about Pizzazz, and that was the most fun.
That was the most fun.
Tell us why.
The music of the 1930s and 40s was my favorite music. A man by the name of Salvador Guaragni, who was an Italian composer, changed his name to Harry Warren. Harry Warren became Mr. Hollywood. And the reason most people don't know about Harry Warren is that he wasn't Broadway. He wasn't Mr. Broadway like Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin was Mr. Broadway. He was Mr. Hollywood. And he put on the shows for Hollywood, which was the 1930s. All the shows that he did then were very successful. He had 44 shows, 44 songs.
Really?
He wrote 400 songs.
Wow.
44 of them were on a hit parade. 11 of them won Academy Awards. So Mr. Harry Warren was a very famous man. Yeah.
Okay.
The man was a really great.
So now okay, so.
So I decided I was going to do a show about Harry Warren. So I flew out to San Francisco, met him in Los Angeles. He sat down at the piano and played all 400 songs for us.
Really?
And we put it on tape.
He played all 400
All
songs?
400, well, the melody of all 400 songs.
Wow.
And the very first show we did, we had 101 songs in the first show.
In the
which,
song.
Which we did, 101 songs in our first show,
Wow.
which we put on at a college.
Wow.
And they were all very good. How do you pick out the songs you want for the show?
Yeah.
Well, we then brought the show down to Lullaby on Broadway,
Right.
where we had about 40 songs, and we couldn't
And
couldn't raise enough money. We needed at that time $4 million, and we only had 800,000.
Wow.
So we couldn't raise our first
Big
million.
deficit, yeah.
So we lost the show, and it was taken away from us. It was then produced as 42nd Street. They took the exact same show.
kidding.
They took the exact same show that I had, and instead of starting with 42nd Street and ending with Lullaby on Broadway, they started with Lullaby on Broadway and ended in 42nd Street.
Oh.
And it became a tremendous hit.
Tremendous hit.
They made billions of
But
dollars
it
on
was
that.
taken from you.
It was taken away from me because I couldn't raise the money.
Oh my God.
Could not raise the money.
Oh my God. So that's the world of production.
So,
The
yeah.
ups and downs.
So 42nd Street became a wonderful hit.
Yeah. And it
Could
was
it-
your idea to start.
It was my whole idea, and they copied the exact same show.
Wow.
Same
And they
show.
Just reversed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so your world
That,
of production.
that's the world of theater.
And now we'll get to this part 2, which I just found out about, which is really again another fascinating facet of your life, which is your
Sculpture.
sculpture. Tell us about that, how that started.
Well, I've always loved sculpture. I always played around with pieces of wax and made all kinds of figures
Since when?
since college. I always played with wax. In fact, there was a cheese that I used to buy that was completely coated in a yellow wax, and I used to take the wax and make figures
Play with it.
and make figures out of it, and that's how I started making figures out of wax.
As a child, you did not have an artistic side to you.
As a child, I was an athlete.
Well, that's interesting.
I was a good student.
Born where?
I was born in Connecticut,
Okay.
but I was brought up in the Bronx,
Ah,
and I was a good athlete.
okay.
And I had skipped a couple of grades. So as a result, when I was in like 8th or 9th grade, I was at least a year younger than all my friends.
Yeah.
So socially, I was behind them. But athletically, I was very good. I was a baseball player, tennis player. I played on my tennis team at DeWitt Clinton High School.
Wow.
I played semi-pro baseball when I was 15,
Did
16.
you really? Wow.
I played semi-pro ball. We had a great team. We played right opposite the Yankee Stadium
No
at
kidding.
McCombsdale Park.
No kidding.
And McCombsdale Park,
Which they never should have
which
taken
is
down.
now the Yankee Stadium.
Oh, really?
The Yankees took it over.
Took it
But what
over,
happened to
wow.
McCombsdale Park?
How
is
could,
that-
how could they take down Yankee Stadium?
What nobody knows, there's a wind tunnel that goes from the East River to the Hudson River. So they turn this stadium around so that they take advantage of the wind And now there are more home runs being hit
No
in the Yankee
kidding.
Stadium.
Now this is a first.
Nobody knows that the reason so many home runs are being hit is because a high fly ball would go right out of the stadium.
They did that on purpose.
They did this on purpose. And that now is the new Yankee Stadium.
Lenny, that is so cool.
Yeah.
So just tell us about this wind tunnel. Just
There
how did
is-
you know?
there-
How did you know about it?
How do we know about
Because
it?
you played there.
We played there, and we had one player who would hit high fly balls, which would go right out of the park. So he hit 5 home runs every game. Every game. Unfortunately, he couldn't catch a ball to save his life. So we put him in right field to get him out of the way.
Right.
But at that time, we were like 15, 16, 17 years of age.
Right.
We were Jewish boys.
Right.
At that time, there were no Jews in baseball, except
Right.
maybe Hank Greenberg.
Right.
And we had a great team.
But so based on his hits, you figured out that there was a wind?
We knew it. He hit a high fly ball. The wind would take it right out of the park.
No kidding.
5 home runs every game.
So the people who constructed the new Yankee Stadium
Turned it around.
knew that.
Yeah. And they took advantage of the.
Wow.
We had a.
That is amazing.
We had a very good baseball team. But like I say, nobody can go any place. I was like 17 years of age.
Yeah.
I also worked selling sodas at the George Washington Bridge,
Wow.
selling sodas to the workmen on the New York side as they were building the George Washington
As they were
Bridge.
building the George Washington Bridge.
That was in 1935, 6, 7.
That's amazing. You know, you're giving me too many stories. You realize that. You gotta, it's just too much.
Take your pick.
It's too rich.
Take your
But
pick.
anyway, let's get back to your
When I was
sculpting.
16,
Yeah.
I worked at Randall's Island for the Olympic tryouts for the Berlin 1936 Olympics.
No kidding.
And I sold sodas and ice cream there.
No kidding.
And I watched every major runner, people like Jesse Owens and
No
Ralph
kidding.
Metcalf,
You watched
who
them
won,
practicing.
watched the Olympic tryouts.
Olympic
Watched the
tryouts.
actual tryouts.
Wow.
And they won all the actual gold medals.
Wow. Yes.
That was
huge back then.
That was huge.
That was huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to your sculpting. So sculpting just developed in college. you
It
said.
developed, and every time I found an artist that I liked, I asked him if I can move in with him. I would pay half the rent. Don't teach me anything. Let me just watch it. And that's what I did. I had a studio with a fellow by the name of Chaim Gross, who was a very famous sculptor at the time. I then moved in with another guy, at the moment I can't think of his name, who had a studio just below Zero Mostel. Zero Mostel was on a 4th floor, we were on a 3rd floor.
No kidding.
And then when Zero Mostel gave up a studio, I took over his.
He was living there.
He was living on a 3rd floor. That was his studio. He would paint, and we would sculpt.
Zero Mostel would paint.
He great painter.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was a great painter. I was on 45th Street
Was
in
he
New
an
York.
actor at that time?
Yes,
Of note.
yes. He's the one who did several shows.
I know. He's amazing.
He did The Producer. He did
Fiddler on the Roof.
Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah.
But anyway,
He
let's
was-
get back to so you.
In fact, they did a show. In fact, they did a show about Zero Mostel, and that studio, which later became my studio,
Really?
was on stage. That was the studio that they predicted that they showed the show.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you realize how many lives you've touched? It's really amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And much of it by happenstance. You know.
And anyhow, I learned
But anyway, go ahead,
learned
sorry.
how to sculpt through. I learned how to weld through Herbie Calum. He taught me how to weld. He didn't teach me how to weld. I watched him.
So you just wanted to learn.
I just wanted to learn. And by watching, I learned. With Chaim Gross, I worked with wax, and we would then have it
Cast.
produced cast in bronze.
That's it.
But with welding, you start right away with,
Yeah, you do your
welded
own.
steel.
Yeah.
Yes, I welded. In fact, one of my famous sculptors is 22 feet tall. It was a 12-foot man, prima ballerina, holding up an 8-foot female ballerina.
Yes, tell us about that,
That-
because this is, and if you can show it.
That's 22 feet tall. This is me, yeah.
At a younger age, huh? Let me take this. So that's you. Actually, is that the design?
That's me standing there. That's the design for this.
Yeah.
And actually, it was posed by prima ballerinas, Carol Van Araldingen and Jacques Dubois,
This is
Actually,
with
at the George Balanchine Theater Ballet, the old Theater Ballet,
Yeah.
Balanchine's Ballet.
Yeah. And how did you get to them? How did you get to
She
Valentine?
was married to a very good friend of mine,
Okay, good.
and she commissioned me to do
To do that. To do that.
to do the sculpture.
Ah.
And I
Can
have
you see
it.
some of your other works? Just.
Here are some of the other works.
That's a beautiful piece, actually.
These are welded steels. These are welded steels. This one won a couple of awards, mother and child. Um,
You've done many.
many,
Many.
try a couple of hundred.
A couple of hundred.
Um,
On the side.
this is my favorite part of my chess piece. He's the knight.
How big is that?
About 12 to 15 inches.
Okay.
This is
So it's a
cast
chess
in
set.
bronze.
I see.
Cast in bronze. This is the king and queen. These are the two bishops.
Yeah, hold it up.
Two bishops. Here's the king and queen and the bishops and a knight.
Wonderful.
This is Mephisto.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful piece. Look at that. Look at the grace of that. You know, you have two styles, it looks like. One is a very
This one won an
style.
award, mother and child. This is wax.
Yeah, hold it up.
Started
I'll
in
get
wax.
pictures of that. But you know, it's interesting. You have two styles. One
Well,
of
you
them
work in different material.
Oh.
When you work in a different material, the material will dictate
Oh.
what you're going to
This
do.
one's much more graceful, and the other is more
Static, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
it's
if
just
you're working
more-
in steel, you can only accept it's not bendable,
I see.
so you can only accept what it's doing for you.
I see. And now let me just to conclude this. Really, and this could go on. I mean, I can see how this could just go on and on and on, because you have so many facets to your life. Tell me about the Friars Club and what that's meant to you.
Friars Club is an organization of actors and comedians. It's over 100 years old. And it started with people like Al Jolson, Eddie Cantor.
Really?
Yeah, these are all the
early
and their
ones.
claim to fame are all the big roasts they had. They would have tremendous roasts where
yeah.
they would use every four-letter word
Yeah.
and they're very exciting.
Yeah.
It's,
So this started. Do you know who started it exactly, or?
well, Milton Berle bought this building for the Friars in 1957. He paid $40,000 for the $40,000 down. It was a $400,000 purchase.
Oh, okay, so not cheap back.
It's probably worth $40 million now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And at that time, it was a very exciting.
Yeah.
I was blown away the very first time I
I'm
came
sure
here.
you were.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were.
And all the old-time comedians are no longer with us.
No.
So now it's all the secondary comedians. And even their starting to die away.
Yeah.
So all the young kids are now coming up,
Are they?
and the comedians, there's still some left. In fact, the
Of
only
the original guard.
the original guys, I think the only one left is Shecky Green. He's out in Las Vegas. I think he's the only one of the old timers that are left. Milton Berle, who bought the club here, was one of the last of the old time comics.
Times,
He and Joey Adams
Yeah.
and Henny Youngman
Yeah.
and Red Buttons.
Yeah.
They're great comics. They're great comics.
So
And
any other thoughts or anything you want to add? And just go anywhere you'd like
Well-
to go. Anything else you'd like to tell us?
anything else I'd like to tell you? Life goes on. I will be 98 years old this year.
98.
98 years old this year.
You're putting me to shame. I look so
It's only a number. And
98.
yeah.
And
In
you're
fact,
so vigorous.
in fact, they had a pool tournament here, and I played for the championship,
And you came in
and
second.
I came in second.
Yeah, your competition, the one who won who was the...
Harold Siegel was the one who won. He is
he's-
good.
He's good.
He is good. He's won.
98 and you came in second.
Yeah, he has won 5 out of the last 10 years. He wins very often.
98. Where are you going now?
Where am I going? I go to work every day.
At the Ace.
I sell corrugated boxes. If another show comes up, yes, I will produce another show.
Do you
Cagney,
have another goal now? Do you have... What do you see in the future for yourself?
what do I see in the future? One day at a time. You thank God for every day. Every day is a beautiful day. I wrote a dossier on 90 years of wisdom, and I'll show you a copy of that.
I'd love to see that.
Here is a dossier that I wrote on my life. I duplicated a couple of pages of the war experiences, which I'll give to you.
Yeah.
Okay, here is the war experiences.
Oh, wow.
Here's the 90 years of wisdom, and starts off with number 1, do a good deed every day of your life anonymously.
Ah.
Fill your life with love and compassion. Relax, lighten up, be happy, smile. Tell someone you love them daily.
This has been a fascinating journey. And I'm fascinated at the end, if I can say, by the vigor of your personality and your philosophy throughout life.
I live life one day at a time. I thank God every day. Every day is a
Was that
beautiful,
always true, or is this
always true. Last 20 years,
last 20 years?
last 20 years. It's true. Live every day like it's a blessing. I'm thrilled that I'm here. And every day is a
And the
beautiful day.
secret to your longevity?
Keep your mind active. Keep busy. I also have a young wife, which helps. And
Which helps a lot.
And she keeps me busy.
She keeps you busy. She
Yeah.
keeps you on track.
Yeah, keeps me on track. Socially, we have a good social life.
Yes.
We're very active.
Physically as well as mentally.
Physically, I've always been a good athlete. Like I play pool, I go fishing.
Yeah.
I gave up tennis 1 year ago because
No
I
kidding.
had open heart surgery.
Oh,
I had a valve replacement.
Oh, wow.
But it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. I
life
go
goes
on.
on.
I go on. And yes, I expect to live.
How
Yes, I expect to.
long? How long?
I'll work forever for however long forever is.
I love that attitude. I love people tell me, "Well, you retired." I say, "How can one retire?"
I don't know what retirement
You
means.
die. I die.
Don't know what it means.
Yeah.
Don't know what it means.
So anyway, let's put some conclusion. Thank you for being on Conversations Over Cappuccino.
You're quite welcome. Nice
And
talking
it was
to you.
an amazing journey that you've taken us on here.